could go in. I want to see my beautiful legs.
So we are live with another Going Dutch. It's been a while since I've been on here, but important matters calls for Joe Frisaro to join me because right now he's probably the most important man in South Florida to follow. Because for the first time, how crazy does this sound? For the first time in 17 years, the Marlins can clinch the playoffs tomorrow, possibly.
No, I mean it's amazing. I mean, how old were you in 03?
I was 5 years old.
5 years old. So your generation is really kind of experienced in the first pennant race, the first, that September meaningful games that really mattered. Obviously, there were some moments in 16 and 17 where they kind of flirted with being in it, but they really kind of weren't at this time. But this is the first time since, and that was my second year on the beat, not my second year doing sports because I'm ancient, but yeah. So for your generation, and it's thrilling, and it's funny because I talked to Jack McKeon the other day, just to catch up, and he's following the Marlins, and he's really happy for the fans. So it's guys like you and the guys that hadn't experienced what it really is, where you literally are seeing what the Phillies are doing and what the Mets might be doing, or the Cardinals and so forth, and this is what baseball is about. This is what a pennant race is about, and that's the thrill for you guys. And that I was kind of fortunate because that's my second year on the beat. I started at MLB.com in 2002. That team was just a few games under 500, and you knew the nucleus was there, the core was there. And then 03, my second year on the beat, they took off and they just surprised everybody, and just still the greatest team I ever covered in any level of sports. I've got about 38 years in sports journalism, but that team, because they won it in the way they did it, and just the championship heart, is just kind of something that's always stuck. And that's kind of the beauty of you seeing what this team's doing, overcoming the adversity and putting themselves in position to have a chance. And that's what you want. You want an opportunity. Everyone's asked me, "Oh, do you want to play the Padres or the Cubs or whatever?" You want to play the best team in front of you, but more importantly, you want to play your best baseball going into that. You don't want to backdoor in and just be lucky and then just go in and not make a good showing. You want to be playing really well. And if you're playing really well, you match up with pretty much anyone.
And I mean, the first round this year is a best 2 out of 3. And if you're going 6-0 and Sandy, I mean, who's to say that's not?
Chances. You got
who's to say that's not the 2 best players to go in the NL? I like my chances going with 6-0 and Sandy into any playoff series, and let alone a best 2 out of 3. I mean, how so? Yeah. But what I want to do is bring it back to spring training 1.0. This team was still probably, one more year away until we can think about playoffs. But do you think this is more of a young team that developed earlier than thought, or is this more just a beneficial to the 60-game schedule?
That's hard to answer because we're never really going to know what 162 would look like. But I tell you this, and I'm the last person, and I probably get into more tips on Twitter with people who overvalue spring training and what it means, and a guy had a good week or a good day or whatnot, because it's not always representative. But what I noticed, and it started from game one when they played the Mets at Port St. Lucie. And I think John Berti led off, and then Monte hit second that day. And with Monte comes up in the first, like a little bit of a shift going. He hits a single to right. Then he steals second and third and kind of manufactures a run. Now, obviously, the Mets aren't holding runners the first day of spring training. Everyone's, they're not really doing game planning. And on surface, you could look and say, no big deal, right? Except for it kind of set a tempo of what they're going to be. And what Monte did then is kind of what energized what we saw Jazz do in spring training, and Lewin Diaz emerge in spring training, and some of these other guys the prospects. Edward Cabrera was, remember, Sixto was kind of on his own program, going a little slower. He admittedly wasn't in the greatest shape, but they also weren't going to chance him. But Cabrera was like, in spring training, I was like, whoa, you can see why there was so much hype about him. But
Hmm.
guys were doing it. And what I think it signaled was that they came to play. And they came to do more than just go through the motions. A veteran team, a team like the Yankees, they're not really caring about the first 2 or 3 weeks of spring training. But you could see from day one the Marlins were, and what those kids did was kind of put the heat on the veterans to kind of step up their game, because it kind of was symbolic that they were going to be on their heels to want to get up here. And what it did was became contagious, where this team was going to have an identity, which was going to be an aggressive, energetic style. And so, okay, it's beyond their control that the pandemic came and everything happened. Well, through the shutdown in the months that followed, Mel Stoudemire Jr. had his pitchers all throwing on regular, wherever they were, however they could manage to do it. They were on a very, disciplined routine. So when it got to July, when camp opened again, they were ready. They were as ready as anyone. So even though you kind of have to look and say they haven't proved it, they're like, keep in mind, they lost 105 games last year, and that's a lot.
Hmm.
And no one was believing, and then obviously the way it started with the COVID and not playing for 8 days, but they come out after that and just with a whole new cast basically of guys, and they roll off five in a row, and next thing you know, they're 7-1, and there's like this kind of, it doesn't matter whatever they were hit with, they were going to respond, and I don't think any other team was as prepared or would have been. Now ask yourself, why were they the ones that seemed more focused on just playing baseball instead of, they could have easily said we lost 18 players basically in 1 week on the IL, and we're dealing with so much already. They could have very easily said this wasn't our year. We'll do the best we can, or they could have set the goal of, let's finish 500, or let's just not be in last place. None of that was. They were kind of, why not us? Remember that Derek Jeter
Hmm.
came out the day that they came, said, why not us? Michael Hill say it, Don Mattingly, players all bought into it, and they are literally, have been a remarkable story based on perseverance. So, is this a benefit of 60 games over 162? Well, yes, it's a benefit, but all they're dealing with is the context of 60 games.
Hmm.
I think some other teams fell into the trap thinking we could get off. I think some other teams managed and coached and prepared as if it was 162 because of muscle memory. These guys
Yeah.
legitimately said, if we're going to play 60 games, well, this is what we got to do it.
Hmm. Yeah, because really in a 60-game schedule, the first 15
Like, I'm
games, first.
losing you. Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? You can hear me now? Can you hear me?
Can't hear you. Can't hear your audio. You're on mute.
Can you hear me?
You're off mute.
What about now? No?
Sorry.
You can hear me? You still can't hear me?
Sorry.
Hello? No? No?
Uh,
Hello? Can you hear me? Sorry, guys. Quick technical difficulty.
Gonna text me the questions.
I'm a.
Okay, we'll get to this with live television. Could it be like, right?
Yeah.
How would I have done that?
Like you turned your volume off. Sorry, guys. Quick technical difficulties
This
here.
is crazy.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, Joe.
Hey, what's going on? So you're going to be the interpreter?
Joe, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, so it's a problem between you two. Okay, what you can do, Joe, try to get out and come back to the same link.
Okay. Log out and come right back in?
Yes, please.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry about that, guys.
I was watching live and I was, oh, what happened?
Some technical difficulties. Sorry,
It
guys.
happens.
This is what
It
happens
happens.
when you do it live. You run into problems when you do it live.
Right.
Joe's coming back. Don't worry.
Yes.
How are you, Alejandro?
So tonight we have Sixto, right? Sixto game.
We got Sixto Day. This is a must win.
Yes, sir.
How are you feeling?
Good. I feel good. But have you noticed every time the Miami Heat plays? Yeah. There you go. Okay, let's try it again. I'm gonna help out.
Okay.
You hear me now, Joe?
Yeah, I got you now.
Okay.
Yeah, blame me. Blame the guest, right? You blame the guest.
We don't know what happened there, but we're back live.
Okay.
So what I was going on, I believe I was about to say, is this is probably like one of the most improbable runs to the playoffs we've ever seen. Because you mentioned like some teams were managing for 162. Like for the first in a 60-game season, like the first 10, 15 games of the season is basically your season. That's how you're going to define your season in a 60-game season, is how you play in the first 10. Maybe the first 20. A good team like the Dodgers, if they started off slow in the first 20, maybe they can make it up. But like a team's first 10 in this type of season is going to define their season that way. So starting off 7-1 was like starting off, like 30-1 or something crazy like that,
Yeah. And keep in mind, teams were based on the August 31st trade deadline, and it takes a couple of weeks, for your organization to formulate trades. 10, 15 games was determining whether teams were buyers or sellers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Teams that are pretty good teams that were on paper supposed to be pretty good teams were pulling the plug on the season after 20 games. And that just was the nature of where it was. Obviously, going to 8 playoff teams, and this is, I think, going to kind of be defining. The hope is that the Marlins get over 500, they get in, and there's no really completely backdoor in with a long losing streak and under 500, and because you're going to create a lot of criticism to an expanded playoff format in that scenario. But
they would have been a wild card team regardless, though, right?
Possibly, but is there going to be a 2018 win wild card team? I think the league is kind of hoping it's not. It's like that their 8 seeds are at least 30 wins. So, but it is what it is. It is where they are. But yeah, teams had to step up, and I think what's the most remarkable part of what the Marlins did was James Hoyt, Richard Blyer. I mean, these guys like. Other teams were, you hear in the Phillies, I'm listening because we're all kind of following the Phillies right now as well. Hearing Joe Girardi, and they talk about all their injuries. Well, it's like, the Yankees talk about their injuries, and granted, they've had a ton. But it's like they could have gotten to James Hoyt. They could have gotten to Richard. Not every move has to be Starling Marte.
Yeah.
Not every move has, and that's how they kind of, they got Brandon Lee Brandt, and I remember seeing his dad, Charlie, pitching. And that kid, he's unfortunately got hurt, but he was serviceable for about a week. And that was an indie ball guy, so it's like they moved the moves they made, the second, third moves they made to just kind of not, let Kinsler have, 50 innings in the first 2 weeks of the year and be done, or Boxberger or whatnot. But the moves they made allowed them to stay above water until Miggy came back and Coop came back and, Harold came back for a minute. But some of the guys that came back, Sandy's now back. And, those guys, it just, that's where it's the fascinating thing is to make over what is over 160 roster moves, over 18 major league debuts, and if Cabrera somehow gets up this final few days, that'd be 19. It's just unheard of stuff.
Hmm. And what's the crazy like you said, they basically had a whole new team.
Yeah.
1 week into the season, they had a whole new roster, and they were still able to keep it up. That's why I think, I mean, I know obviously they've won the World Series and they won the World Series twice, but you have to argue just getting to the postseason is one of the most remarkable things in franchise history. Just it goes right up there with the World Series, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, no, because World Series is the World Series. That's the ultimate prize, and you can't lose focus. That's the one thing that I think too many get lost in. It's like the game is played to win it all,
Hmm.
and to win it all, that is the ultimate goal. That is and if that somehow is, yes, you get a lot of credit for overcoming odds and doing achievements. And would this go down if they got to the playoffs and didn't win the World Series? It goes down technically as the third best season ever.
Yeah.
Because the others two, they completed the task. I mean, '03 had to go through Chicago and the Bartman game and be down 3-1 and come from 10 games under 500 and the managerial change and Dontrell mania and Beckett, doing it in short. That is really, and then '97, of course, what they did, and to come back in the late innings and then walk it off on Council's hit or Council score on Renteria's hit. Those are the defining moments. It's winning the championships that are going to be what you want to be about ultimately, and I'm sure Derek Jeter would agree but that doesn't take anything away or minimize what if you're looking for adversity, perseverance, just a team that just found a way. Yeah, this is what goes on. The shame of it is, as reporters, we're not in the clubhouse to bring that side of it. But the job that a Corey Dickerson, Francisco Cervelli, even on the AL is, keep Aguilar, Matt Choi, those guys, their voices in that clubhouse to just make a kid. You lose 29-9,
Hmm.
and then you walk off the Phillies the next day. Normally, a team when you lose 29-9, you're normally broken for a while, and you have to recover from that. Losses like that tend to have a hangover, and over 162, it tends to just be, oh my goodness, or a late lead blown. Here they've literally, and Donnie's preached it, of just the turn the page thing. Unbelievable the way they do that, to shake that off, literally to get knocked out in the most embarrassing way. Think of how Twitter and everyone just laughed at the Marlins 29-9.
Yeah.
They're and then they go and beat the Phillies five times in 7 games. So
Hmm.
they may ultimately get the last laugh.
And what's crazy is like a lot of people on Twitter have made this point of like, oh, they're not a playoff team. Look at their run differential. Look at their run differential. But it's like that's so misleading because they've been blown out like what 5 times, 6 times. Like they're
Yeah,
minus 37, but that's because first of all they lost by 20 runs 1 game,
yeah.
and then since then I think they've lost by 10 twice, right? Or around.
Yeah, well, even last night, that was a or whatever, I forgot the final score last night, but it was like it was a potential game, or then we've seen games that are a 1 or 2 run game, and next thing you know they can't get out of the inning. But keep this in mind too: if it was only about run differential, they could put in their best relievers and stop the bleeding right there and lose
Mhm.
by 4
Yeah.
or 5. Rather than if that's the point, is to not have a terrible run. Over 162 run differential is very telling. Over 60, where you could have a few games where, because everything is different this year. That's
Yeah.
why moving forward, and we have to be careful as a sports media, local media as well, of overvaluing some of this stuff and thinking what we're seeing is for real, because there is a degree of newness, and these players haven't fully been exposed. As good as Sixto's been, it's been what, 5, 6 starts, six, I think it's a 7th start tonight.
Hmm.
It's like they're still, and that doesn't mean he won't be really good or an all-star, but it's not always just going to be easy. And so but again, the context is a 60 game season, so it's Donnie has been like, hey, these will be these games they are what they are. You lose by 15 or 10 or more, but it's kind of irrelevant. You lose by 20 to the Braves and win the series 2-1. Back at that series. What happens if Marte's line drive the other day with bases loaded is in the corner and right in left field instead of the 110 miles an hour? They win a game. And then, so it's like, okay, you could do that and then lose big yesterday. It's still been 1-1 going into tonight and still mathematically with a shot to win the East.
Yeah. So I want to ask you one more thing before I have a couple of questions from people on Twitter. But so there's 7 games, right? 7 games left? Or 5 games left, I'm sorry. 5 games left. How do they approach that? You have Sixto going tonight, which actually lines up pretty well for potentially game 1, right? But, like the magic number is 3 right now, but then there's some controversy that the Mets win. It could turn into 4. Like the Mets are still there technically somehow. Andy Slater brought it up about how the magic number can still technically be 4 after tonight. How do they approach these next 5 games? Do you think in the back of your head, like, we've probably got this? I mean, it's going to take a lot for them not to make the playoffs at this point. Do you think, okay, we got this? Or do you hold, like, what do you do if you go into the Bronx, you're still not clinched? Do you throw out a Sixto on a little bit days of rest and you waste him for game 1? Like, how do they approach these next 5 games?
Yeah, that's a great question, because you literally, for one, you can't worry about the Phillies or the Mets or whoever else is there. They literally can't. And that's why all you can control is you want to be the best version of yourself. So it's like you're winning a race by, whether it's 10 yards or 20 yards. You can't just keep looking behind you. You have to say, how did I get the 10-yard lead? And you have to go that way. You have to manage tonight as a must-win game, and you're going against a really good pitcher in Fried. So you got to still show the Braves that we get in, we may run into you again, and we're going to remember some of these games. We're going to remember that you celebrated on your field with us in the imposing play. And so they got to kind of send a little bit of signal. And you can't. And the thing also is, if from a developmental standpoint, and I think that's big too. If you want to look at the big picture, they're in a great spot because so many young players who have experienced this should help their careers, because they're going to see what the expectation is. It's not going to be, oh, I'm excited to be in a big league clubhouse and get big league money and travel around and be a 4th or 5th place team. They're going to see what it's like to go up against the best and play a game where they have as much at stake as you. So you got to manage, and you want to send a signal that to your organization and everyone involved and this fan base. Because I think if the fan base sees a team that just kind of limps in, they'll say, okay, it's good, a good story, but are they really going to buy in other than a team that's like, whoa, Sixto went and beat Fried. He's put himself in the Rookie of the Year conversation. He's, and he looks like he could be with Sandy a future ace of this team, where it's going to be kind of fun, and then eventually Cabrera, hopefully, and it's like, wow, they're building something special. So I'm approaching tonight. Now, let's say it doesn't go your way. Then you may do a little more score. I probably, only because of who Sixto is and the fact that he's so young, and in terms of his pro innings, and there was no minor league season, I probably do not bring him back. Maybe I activate Cabrera for Sunday if I got to win that. And maybe he goes 3 innings as an opener, or maybe he's a bridge guy if something, because that look is going to be, assuming he's up to the moment and handles it, there's going to be no crowd at Yankee Stadium, so it's not like that moment should intimidate him in terms of the atmosphere, but the Yankees haven't seen him. So, that could be a secret weapon type of thing. But I have to go all in if I'm Donnie to win this game as a statement to your clubhouse that, look, because if you don't win this tonight and the Mets and Phillies win, then you're going to start, now you're going to go into Final Four, and you're going to start pressing, and you don't want it to just completely unravel where all the goodwill and all the good stuff you did. But I think what is kind of lost in this is when they took care of business against the Phillies and came and finished that 9-6 homestand at 28-24, they built that kind of 4-game cushion, which gave them a little bit of play for a mild slump. Now they Now they've lost 3 in a row. You don't want to completely let it evaporate in 4 days, but it did buy them some time and put them in a really good spot for where they are right now.
So that leads to the two questions I have from Twitter. Since you mentioned Cabrera, we'll go to that one first. I don't know the postseason rules this year, roster wise. Is he eligible for the postseason?
Yes, because he's on the 40-man.
Okay.
So yeah, and they could put him anyway. Even if he wasn't, they could add him. They're gonna have to set the rosters. Assume they get in. I think that's why he's here. To be honest, I think in their perfect world they clinch, and I think that they wouldn't mind adding him to the postseason roster.
Can you possibly see him and Stanek? This is a question from Fade Martins. Him and Stanek be openers in the postseason?
I don't see them doing an opener because I think that. Oh, you mean for Game 4? Like if there's Game 4, if they don't trust either Trevor or Urania? Yeah. They're maybe not an opener by the Rays definition of it, but maybe a really quick hook piggyback guy. It may be again with those guys. That's not a bad idea. Even though he wouldn't start, because let's make this clear, Cabrera dealt with a little bit of an arm issue. He's way too valuable to risk. He wasn't built up in Jupiter to start. When I say that means a starter, 6 innings, whatever. That doesn't mean he can't throw the first pitch in a game and be out of there in the second inning, and then someone comes at me, you said he wouldn't start. No, that's not what he's being built to do. That's not fair to him either. But he could definitely be a guy, because the other guy that it could have been would have been like Max Meyer, early on, but they clearly didn't go that route. He's not part of the taxi squad. He'll just go to instructs when that opens in October, with the rest of the minor leaguers invited there. But they're going to have to figure out whether or not, they're going to go with 4-man, 5-man. I know it's a straight run. It's not really the days off. So it's going to be harder to get there. But I think that there could be a lot more of that, opener, maybe Urania. And why I say maybe Cabrera in that role is, what his preparation and exactly when you want him in the game.
And I think that would be huge for them if he can come in and do it.
Give 2 innings. If he can give 2 innings, then
give 2 innings, set the tempo in a Game 4.
That's it. Yeah. That could be.
That would be technically.
Whatever.
Well, there won't be a game.
Or whatever.
Okay, there won't be
not
Game
in the
4
first round. It would be
the second round.
The second round.
Yeah.
Which I guess would be is that the divisions? I haven't even.
Yeah, that'd be
the division series.
Yeah. And this one from Fish Stripes, and you have to be, because this is the guy you got to be the most happiest for if they clinch, is Miguel Rojas, and they want to know what was your first impression of Miguel Rojas, and how surprising is it that he has transformed into a high quality everyday player for a contending team?
Oh yeah, how could you not be? Miguel Rojas, from the day he joined the Marlins as the throw-in the D. Gordon and Dan Herron trade, has you look at him and you said, this guy is just a really good backup utility player. Who, and then you meet the person and you see the character and the work ethic and the determination to become an everyday shortstop, but the ultimate team guy. Yeah, he's defining it. Yeah, he's the face of it. So yes, he's the one that you feel from the established, the guys that have had to endure a lot of losing, an ownership change, seeing your buddies get traded, to all that, to residing in South Florida, Southwest Broward, kind of near us, yep.
I've seen him around.
And to be someone that's bought into Miami and want to be part of this, yeah, absolutely. And I'm trying to think of, because there are always people that come to mind, say most improved player. There's been a lot I've seen really, a guy at one time I thought Marcell Ozuna was like the most improved Marlin, because he made leaps from inconsistent where you saw it to being an all-star. So so he's up there clearly through the years. And there's some of these guys that have a chance to still be pretty good that are on this roster that would qualify as most improved types.
Yeah. You got to be excited for him. And I know how much hate he gets. You got to be excited for Urania too. You got to be excited for the guys that were part of the core teams that went through the rebuild, and Urania was good. He had 2 really solid seasons for the Marlins in like the year
Yeah.
Jose died and then the year after. He was really, really solid for them. And so you got to be happy for him
Yeah.
too. I know people don't want to see him play in a playoff game, but you got to be happy for those guys that's experienced everything in the past 3 years.
It's funny. You talk about Urania, and I was telling my wife this morning because she gets frustrated by him by like a lot a lot of fans. And I said, I remember the day when he might have been about 17 or 18 years old. I was at Roger Dean Stadium, and Wayne Rosenthal, we remember him, right? The former pitching coach with the Marlins, and then he was in the minor league side. And I'm watching this skinny kid from the DR who looked like he's about 12 warming up on the mound. He goes, "This is Jose Urania. He's going to be in the big league someday." I said, "What'd you get?" He said, "Whatever the number was." They signed him at 15, 16, whatever, for probably not a ton of money. And the kid, then you see him now where he's a physical specimen. He throws 96, 97. And yeah, I mean, he's a Marlin. Now, I look at the Uranius, and I understand the fans, they see the moment. But I think what we've seen, the downside of when you have a team that's rebuilding and a team that's, being overmatched is you're these players are who they are. Urania is a 5th starter guy who was asked to be an opening day starter 2 years in a row. So he's now going against Scherzer, Lester on opening day. He's now being cast as something more than what he probably should have been. But that doesn't mean he doesn't have really good value as a back end starter, as a situational reliever who as you note, has logged a ton of innings, made all these starts, and all his teammates love him because of his work ethic. He's a really good person, a really, so there's more to it than, oh, he just didn't get the job done and blah, blah, blah. And I think that gets lost. And that's more the fault of an organization putting players. I remember when the Marlins were beating up on the Nationals. And you probably remember when who was it? John Landon, I believe was his name. He was starting. He was their opening day starter, who really was. It was like he was like a 4th starter, and he's drawing like Yohan Santana, and he's drawing like everybody's ace, Josh Johnson in the day, and everyone's like, the guy's a good pitcher, but he's asked to be a 1 on a 100-loss team that helped him get Strasburg and Harper and build, Nationals for what they became. So don't lose sight of that. That's my only thing to fans. Where'd you go? Mike has buffered out, so that's why I'm sitting here. Anything else? In my messy room.
Okay, Joe. I don't know what happened with Dutch, but I'm gonna say
Yeah, he just disappeared. Yeah.
It's all right. So thank you very much for joining us here in Going Dutch, and hopefully the Marlins make it to the playoffs, right?
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been a fun ride, and I'm one of those who believes. Look, we all know what 2020's brought, and and everyone's there's a lot bigger things in the world than a baseball season and whatnot. But you try to be thankful for the opportunities you have, and make the best of it, and for the Marlins to have made the best of a rough situation, I think should be inspiring for a lot of people in the sport itself. So.
Yeah. Regardless of how far they make it, it's gonna be a season to remember. Dutch is back here, so he has a couple of moments to say goodbye. Go ahead, Dutch.
Thank you, Joe. Sorry, my computer crashed real quick.
No problem.
So
Periscope thing is really fun.
Yeah, really, really headaches here. One thing I wanted to say, one last thing. Appreciate you coming on, but how cool would it be? I know you want it to happen sooner, but how fitting would it be for them to clinch in New York
Oh, it's at Yankee Stadium
at Yankee Stadium?
where they
I know
won
it's not the
game
same Yankee
six.
Stadium, but like,
Oh, but they would know it. They would know it. It's kind of funny. Yeah, that would be interesting. But I think more importantly is take care of business and get Aguilar off his feet and get some of these guys a little bit of rest before the real games start.
yeah. So 6-0 tonight. Hopefully the magic number can turn into 1 tomorrow. You clinch tomorrow and then don't have to worry about it. Rest some guys and go. Game 1 would be what? Have they announced that yet?
I don't even know what day of the week it is half the time right now. So they probably have, but I'm like the most locked into the day that when you're talking next Monday or Tuesday, it's going to be pretty quick. Well, it's interesting before you get rid of me. They're in the bubble right now. So basically everyone is going to be with the Marlins. Their traveling team, their GMs, their owners, Gary Dembo, everybody's there, and families, and they're there. And so it's now, and they're going to go from New York to whether Chicago or San Diego or wherever they're going. That will be their next stop, and hopefully they're not coming back to Miami, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully their next stop is Chicago. It looks like it's going to be right now for game 1.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hopefully we can do this again before game 1 without the technical difficulties.
Well, now we know what we're doing, and now we're some of my messy room in the background. So see how the life of my world is. So, Michael, anytime, buddy. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay, talk to you later. See you.